it's okay. I'm not making it wrong. I'm not making it negative. I would rather you be happy and fulfilled and successful in the way that you should be rather than trying to play somebody else's game because you think it's empowering to think you should be more than you should be. But also on the other end, I want you to have the empowerment to be more than you think you can if you can.
What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Let's look at who you are now and who you used to be. Let's uncover that. Let's accept that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then let's create goals and dreams from that authentic place.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode. It was Freestyle Friday. The hardest part of success is sustaining it. That's what we talked about, Freestyle Friday. I love Freestyle Fridays. Also, I forgot I wanted to do Freestyle Fridays with the lights off. You and I haven't discussed it, but maybe we can do that. I think it'd be cool. Just a thought. Today, for episode number 1678, be real about your circumstances. This thought kind of came, I guess, from a couple different places. But Alan and I were talking about this in Freestyle Friday, where we were talking about how not everybody is going to be the best in the world at something, or not everybody can just go accomplish whatever it is that they believe that they can accomplish. It's a really cool quote to say you're capable of anything, or you can accomplish anything, or you can do whatever you believe you can do, but it just isn't real. It's just not a real thing. I went to the vet last week. I had to take Fudge to the vet. It was last week or the week before. And when Taryn asked me, she said, "Hey, what's your day look like?" And I said, "It's honestly pretty open. I went from having a million calls to having very little calls, but doing a lot of back office work." And she said, "Can you take Fudge to the vet?" And I said, yeah, it's all good. And I think what happens for a lot of us is we're told that no matter what, you have to do a certain thing. It doesn't matter if it's raining. It doesn't matter if it's cold. It doesn't matter if it's snowing. It doesn't matter if you didn't sleep enough. It doesn't matter if you're broke. Whatever. The circumstances don't matter. In this episode, I want to talk about circumstances and how they affect us, and how one person's advice to one person is not the advice you should take, most likely, and vice versa. Should I have said, you know what, Fudge, you're going to have to wait. I have meetings today. I can't move anything. I'll get to it when I can. The circumstances don't allow me. Or should I change the circumstances in order to work in a favor that's most aligned? Obviously, the second one. The example I use with Alan is, am I supposed to bring my laptop to the vet? And hey, what's the Wi-Fi? And then while I'm in the room with them trying to console Fudge, be working? Probably not. But to the opposite front, this is the side Alan was going to talk about, does that mean I should take the entire day off and say, oh, can't book any calls today? No. Circumstances matter. What really shaped this for me, Alan, I was on a podcast one time and they said, do you believe anyone can accomplish anything? And I said, I used to. I used to believe anyone could accomplish anything. And then I started going on podcasts of people that lived in Nigeria or lived in Africa or lived somewhere outside of the U.S. I didn't really have a global perspective. And I said, statistically, it's going to be harder for them to succeed than me, where I was born in the U.S. Where,
can we go into why that is real quick? Just because I want to provide context.
I mean, for any number of reasons. And I don't want to speak... what's the word?
Ill. Let's speak ill.
Not speak ill. When you, oh my God, you always say it's about not knowing something. It sounds very negative.
Ignorant.
Yeah, I don't want to seem ignorant, so I'm not going to use like a specific place. But there are many places in the world that don't have Wi-Fi like we do.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah,
a lot. There are many. I think it's like what, 1 billion people who don't have access to clean water? Something like that?
It's wild.
I think we lose perspective of that, where their circumstances... I interviewed back in the day, before Alan and I were doing this together, someone named... my God, why can't I remember his name? Justin Wren. Justin Wren. Interview was unusable because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But one of the things he does, the philanthropic things he does, is he builds water wells.
You as a coach, man.
I know, right? He builds water wells in the Congo for the pygmy villages because they don't have access to water. their journey to success is drastically different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
So circumstances matter. If you had a death in the family, you probably should take some time off. And maybe you don't do your morning routine 10 out of 10. And maybe you don't work a 12-hour day. And maybe you don't do what's best for business. Maybe you do what's best for you and you do what's best for your family. I've had just a new appreciation and a new understanding and a new level of empathy because we've been in business for 7 years and I've had deaths in the family and I've had pets be sick. I don't have children, so I can't imagine what that's like. I can imagine it's very challenging. But there have been some days where I want to do this, but circumstances just aren't going to allow me to do it. And I think that's, I don't know, I think for me it's maturing to continue growing and evolving in that regard and just understanding that at a deeper level.
The idea that circumstances, regardless of circumstances, do whatever XYZ, it's motivating. It's important to do whatever you can, but it all comes down to priorities. When I'm on other shows, I'll often say, you have to understand what your top priorities are and the syntax of them, so the order of importance. So right now, in this moment, the most important thing in Alan Lazarus's world is this podcast episode. But you better believe if I heard a crash downstairs and glass shattering, I would immediately stop what we're doing and I would go figure out what was going on with my family.
Yep.
And my priorities would shift. And if Emilia was hurt or my pets were hurt, I would say, Kev, circumstances have arisen. We have to postpone this episode. Now, we don't miss an episode a day, so luckily we have one in the tank and we could postpone it to tomorrow. But the point underneath this is that at all times, your optimal decision, your most effective choice changes. And it's all based on your goals, your priorities, your core values. And that's why life is so difficult, because the chess move that you need to make in order to achieve what you want, that body, that business, that relationship, that career, whatever it is, it changes and shifts. And so one story that I think aligns really beautifully with this is Emilia and I went to South Carolina. I think it was actually, it was South Carolina, but the place we went was North Carolina. But we were on the northern border of South Carolina, I think. I never really know where I am geographically, to be honest. But anyways, so she was working for a company called Alchemy's at the time. She's since gone all in on Evolve Ventures. But back then, she had a colleague, a coworker that I think was from that area or recently vacationed in that area where we were going to be. And she said, "Oh, you're going to go to the Biltmore?" And she has had a Pinterest account for many, many years. And she had on her Pinterest account images of this atrium at the Biltmore, this beautiful plant atrium. And we were headed there, and we do work vacations. So we don't actually vacation. I don't even workations. You can call them workations or leadership retreats or whatever. But we work. And so we go and we take Sunday off for an adventure, but we always work. So usually we'll do boomerang. So we'll leave on Friday night. We'll get there at Friday night, most likely, and work all day Saturday, take Sunday, and then Monday we'll get home and work. And so I had 4 back-to-back sessions. And one of my main focal points at that time was growing my coaching practice. I adore coaching. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world. I love helping people achieve their goals and dreams, and getting paid to do that is just an absolute dream come true. And so I want to grow that. I still want to grow that. So if anyone needs help, please reach out. But the last thing I ever want to do is cancel coaching calls. I do not. That's my priority. My main priority in my career is coaching. It's one-on-one business coaching. And I had 4 back-to-backs with clients I adore. And I remember looking at it. It was boom, 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 boom. And Emilia said, "Oh, there's this place called the Biltmore. And the only day we can go, the tickets are available, and the only day we can go is this." And I sat there and I said, I could tell. You can always tell. You can tell it's one of those, like, listen, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't a 10 out of 10. And I said, "Is this bucket list? Is this something that..." She said, 100%. And I'm sitting there going, okay, are we ever going to be in this place again? What are the chances? No. So not only was that $600 in revenue, But it was also my favorite thing in the entire world, which is one-on-one coaching with clients I adore. And I canceled all 4 sessions. And I sent them a message. I said, listen, this is very extenuating circumstances. You know, these were all long-term clients. You know I don't do this normally. But circumstances, we're in South Carolina. There's this one opportunity. Couldn't get tickets to any other day. They only have a couple available. And it's this time. It's this day. Got to do it. Got to do it. It's one of those moments. Got to do it. What are we going to do? We're never going to come back here. What are we going to vacation again here? And by the way, we could have been more proactive, yes, but we couldn't. She didn't know that this place was 30 minutes from where we were staying until her co-worker that Thursday before we left told her. So sometimes life happens and sometimes you got to do that. But if you're doing that every other Friday, your business is screwed. The only reason why my clients didn't leave me is because I never do that. If I was doing that every other call, they would can me, and they should, by the way. And that's my truth. So at the end of the day, I think, and I told Kev I was going to use this analogy, I'll go quick with it, but you get a flat tire, life happens, circumstances happen. But you canning the whole day just because one circumstance happened, or the whole week, or the whole month, and chalking it up to, this is a bad month, is like you slashing your other 3 tires when you get a flat tire. And so on one extreme, it's grind, do it no matter what, regardless of circumstances. You got to have a little bit of that. That's the grit end. You got to have a little bit of that. But you have to face the duality, the and, not the or, the and of sometimes you're going to have to bite the bullet and make some pivots last minute. And all of us have to live in that duality of planning and preparing and scheduling and pivoting when things happen.
For a while, I was very proudly a member of the 5 a.m. club. I'd get up at 5 a.m. every day. Every day. And then it got to the point where I said, circumstantially, it's probably not great for me to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning if I went to bed at 11. It's just not sustainable. It's not great. It's not healthy. And it's been weird for Alan. It's been weird for me to get up at 6 every day. It's weird. I feel like I'm lazy. But I go to bed at 10. Tara and I get to spend time together. I get 8 hours of sleep, 7.5 minimum, and that's better. But before I was very, very rigid with circumstances. Circumstances didn't matter in a lot of ways. And then I got shingles and I was bedridden for 2 weeks. Then I was like super anxious again. And those were all hints that I probably am pushing too much. Alan got sick, and that was a realization. Mm-hmm. Again, that's the beautiful thing about doing an episode every day and doing it as many times as we have, is because we want to take you with us. I'm learning. I'm sure I know for a fact in the old days, back in the 100s, 200s, 500s even, episode numbers, I probably said you're capable of anything. I'm sure I was guilty of saying that. 100%. 100%. And I'm sure I've said so many things that I don't believe anymore. And I'm sure I said many, many things that I didn't once believe that I do now.
And there's also a lot in there that we used to say that we still say.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are the 3 categories. You used to say it and realize it was naive.
Yeah.
Or you still say it because you believe it just as much, if not more. Or you didn't say things that are now new lessons that you now say. And I would say most of them are the next 2. There's very few things that we used to say that I don't feel like we still say, but there's a couple for sure. Yeah. Because we didn't understand what we understand now. So of course you have to shift those things. And that's why it's so scary to get advice from people. You got to be very careful with who you get advice from. And you have to be careful of what you listen to too. You have to be careful of what podcasts you listen to.
Even us, I always say that. I try to give the best advice I can. I know Alan tries to give the best advice he can, but always run everything. At least I'll speak for myself. Run everything I say through a filter. Everything. Yeah, you got to. I'd be a hypocrite if I said run everything else through a filter. But what I say, don't worry. No, it's always spot on. You don't have to worry about that. It's always spot on. Everything I say is perfect.
It can't be by definition because everyone has different goals.
Yeah.
Different circumstances, different core values, different countries, different currencies, different backgrounds, different cultures, different ethnicities. I wanted to share this because you mentioned it earlier. and of course, any chance to talk about the global economy.
Here we go.
Here we go with the global economy. But the it is a good perspective too, because I often talk about, maybe not that often, but I grew up in a socioeconomic good spot. Then when my stepdad left, we were in trouble financially. So I didn't know how I was going to go to college. Fortunately, I live in a country that had something called equal opportunity. Equal opportunity was big back when we graduated high school. Fortunately, I got financial aid. Massachusetts gave me financial aid. Now, they didn't just blindly give it to me. It was merited based on academics. They're not just going to invest in people that don't care about school. So I had to earn those. But I remember when I went to college, I was freaking out because I was going to lose my financial aid and get kicked out of college if I didn't perform. And then I talked about squatting up with the smartest people I could find, and I had to party a little less, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know, if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes. But the truth of the matter is that fortunately I both earned and was given the opportunity to go to college. And not only that, but I love statistics. So I have a client who I used to coach for years, and she's from Australia, and there's only 47 colleges in all of Australia. And there's more in Massachusetts than that. The US has, I believe it's 5,200 colleges. So when you said earlier that we're very grateful to live in the U.S., I want to break the stats down for everybody. 80% of the world's wealth is GDP-wise is the U.S. And so everything's more expensive here, so let's make that clear. But we are in a country that has the most economic opportunity. Just numbers-wise. Please don't villainize me for that. Just numbers-wise, and trust me, there's a lot of stats that we're not good at whatsoever. So, and by we, I don't even necessarily do any of that. I'm an American, but none of that. Kevin and I, that's not what we're doing here. But my point is that where you grew up and your circumstances do matter.
100%.
They matter big time. Now, if you allow them to matter too much, you will get stuck and you won't overcome those circumstances. So it's a duality. It's holding two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously. I grew up in an environment without a dad. My stepdad left. We were broke, and I did what I could with the circumstances I had. So it's not a question of whether or not your circumstances matter. They do matter. It's whether or not you're going to take the opportunity to do all you can with all you have. And that's going to depend on belief and what podcasts you listen to and what books you read and what mentors you get, what coaches you get. There is so much opportunity out there. I really do hope one day, this is my selfish dream, I hope one day people can look back and say, everyone in Alan's corner wins. I love that. I love all my clients. I was talking to a client earlier, and I said, I got to get you tracking your numbers. She's crushing. She's absolutely crushing. She wouldn't even recognize herself 3 or 4 years ago. And she said that, not me. That's her words. She knows, and she probably knows who I'm talking about right now. She's probably listening right now. The point is that she is leagues ahead of where she was when I met her. And that was our conversations, and that was the habit tracker, and that was the numbers, and that was the spreadsheets, and that blah, 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 blah. I don't want to just talk. I don't, that's not why I'm here. I don't want this podcast to be fun. This podcast is to help you build a bigger, better, brighter future, and we'll also have some fun.
I want it to be fun.
Yeah, Kev wants it to be fun. I want it to be meaningful. And it'll be fun and meaningful now.
It's a perfect mesh. He was a UFC fighter. He's not a UFC fighter anymore. His name is Francis Ngannou, and I don't remember. I want to say Cameroon is where he was from. But he grew up in absolute poverty. From the time he was a child, I believe, was working in like a sand mine or a salt mine, digging. And he ended up, he was on Joe Rogan, and he told his whole story. I don't remember the whole thing, but I'm pretty sure he walked like maybe hundreds of miles to get over the border from where he was to where he was trying to get to, and he ended up living in, I think he ended up living in Paris for a while, and he ended up being the heavyweight champion in the UFC. He left UFC to go box, and he made like $20 million in his last professional boxing match. It doesn't mean he couldn't have done it, but the odds were very much against him.
Yeah.
That's why it's such an inspirational story. That's why it's so moving.
But if he didn't have self-belief
100%.
and work ethic and humility,
he has
that
in spades.
So can we talk about that just for a second? How much self-belief, 0 to 10?
10.
How much humility, 0 to 10?
10. Super humble.
And how much work ethic, 0 to 10?
10.
That's what it is. So even those terrible circumstances that are worse than what many of us can imagine, there is a way out of it. Yeah. That's the duality.
It's
but people say you can
rare.
do anything you set your mind to. That's not true.
Yeah.
You can't do anything you set your mind to, but you can do a lot more than you're probably doing.
Yeah, and that's that's okay.
Yeah, and that's okay.
It's okay.
I often say to people, you are capable of so much more. And I believe that. I do when I'm coaching people. You are capable of so much more. Maybe not tomorrow, but you're so capable of so much more over the long term. You can. We're reading a book in book club. I was going to plug this later, but it's called The Psychology of Money. And the reason I love this book is because it's so honest. And he talks about luck and risk in the book. He talks about how Bill Gates, who was the founder of Microsoft, had a friend of his, and that there was a 1 in a million chance that Bill Gates ended up going to the high school that had a computer back then. Mm. Most high schools back in the 70s didn't have computers. So he had a 1 in a million chance to happen to be at the high school that had a computer, that believed in computers before computers were computers. And so, he was lucky, but he also did something with that luck. And so everyone is unlucky and lucky to a certain extent. I've since studied something called adverse childhood experiences, and I now realize I'm actually wildly unlucky statistically. But I always took advantage of the opportunities in front of me. I shouldn't say always. I would say most of the time I put myself on the higher end of probability of success. And that's all I'm asking anyone to do. It's your circumstances might suck pretty bad, honestly. They also might be really good, and everything's relative. So I try real hard to remember I've got clean drinking water, and I've got clothes and electricity and Wi-Fi. I mean, our car has Wi-Fi. It's so cool. And so I'm very grateful. But I need to work my butt off to earn that every day. It is expensive as hell living here, man. Where we live is statistically one of the most expensive places on planet Earth.
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap. And that's all. It's that duality. It's do all you can with all you have. And if you can honestly look yourself in the mirror and say, I am, that's it. That's the game right there. Awesome.
Last thing from me, because I know this might come off as a negative episode, and if you've been listening to us long enough, you know that's not the goal. Maybe you're tuning in for the first time. Maybe that's the vibe you're getting. One of the best things I ever admitted to myself is I'm not going to be as smart as Alan. Not from a beat yourself up, scarce place. From an abundantly honest place. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Could I spend every day for the rest of my life, 12 hours a day, learning and growing and evolving to try? Sure. I could if that's what I wanted to do, and I do that in many regards. Just because you limit yourself does not mean it's not empowering. I would much rather you be very honest with yourself and but again, it is the duality, right? Not honest on the wrong way where you're actually not honest because you can actually do way more than you think. That's what makes it so hard. But it can be empowering, that's all. When I say that, there's no part of me that I don't feel sad that I'm not going to be as smart. None of that. That's just not what I'm supposed to be. I'm not meant to be that. That's just not what I'm here to do. I'm here to be more relatable. I'm here to be funnier. I'm here to whatever it is. Just that's my goal in this episode, to get that to land. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not making it wrong. I'm not making it negative. I would rather you be happy and fulfilled and successful in the way that you should be, rather than trying to play somebody else's game because you think it's empowering to think you should be more than you should be. But also on the other end, I want you to have the empowerment to be more than you think you can if you can. So do with that what you will.
Very nice. Very nicely said. My next level lesson is I used to tell people, and I did this with Kev, if you want to achieve this, you can become this. I don't do that anymore. Now I say, Kev, let's get honest with ourselves. Let's look at who you really are. Let's look at your past. Let's uncover who you really are. Let's look at your present. What do you love? What don't you love? What can't you stand? What energizes you? What doesn't? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Let's look at who you are now and who you used to be. Let's uncover that. Let's accept that. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And then let's create goals and dreams from that authentic place. Because you trying to study 12 hours a day, it's never going to work. It's not who you are.
Yeah, that's fair.
You couldn't be as smart as me because it wouldn't be aligned. And it's not going to energize you. Reading books all day, that's not going to energize you.
No, I'm not a fan.
Yeah,
I'm not the biggest fan.
So it's one of those things where you have to be very honest with yourself. I think emotional maturity in general, becoming wise, is really accepting who you really are. And then growing from that authentic place. And it took me so many years to figure that out because I just didn't get it. And fortunately, we've coached enough people and podcasts enough all over the world now where we have a big enough sample set to where it's like, oh, okay, I kind of get where I fall on this spectrum of humanity in each category. And we're very blessed for that. And hopefully we can bring some of that to all the listeners. I do believe that this show, and I will just say it as much as I might be villainized for it, I think this show is the best self-awareness show in the game. I think we help people create self-awareness, and I think we help people understand where they fall on a spectrum. If you're from a country that has a GDP, gross domestic product, that's extremely, extremely low, you do not have the same opportunities Kevin and I have. And you and I have to realize that out of the 5 million podcasts in the world, a lot of them are from our country, and we have a competition going with each one of those. And so, yeah, it's abundant, and there's 6 billion people online that could listen to our show, but there's also 5 million podcasts. And so you just got to be real honest with the way the world really is and the way you really are. And it's so empowering when you can learn how to grow from that place instead of deluding yourself into thinking you are more or less than you really are.
Heavy one. Not heavy. A scary one. These are always scary for me. Anytime we talk about things that I know could be perceived as negative, it scares me. But I just call it out. I just try to get the elephant out and say, look. But I think it's the truth.
It's been interesting, brother. The ones that you're scared of, I'm not, and the ones that I'm scared of, you're not.
It's because these are the ones you've been waiting to do. You've been waiting on these. I'll talk about whatever internal. I don't worry about that, but makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Whenever it's the internal stuff, I'm usually the one fearful, and Kevin's loving it. And whenever it's the external global economy,
hyperconscious was internal.
Conversations change lives was external.
Yeah. Hyperconscious was.
You need both.
I wanted to know what keeps you up at night. What's your deepest fear? What's the thing you're afraid to admit to yourself? That's what I wanted to know. I want to know
need both, brother. That's the fascinating thing we've come to is righty and lefty in the 21st century. Duality. Yeah, you need both.
We're going to duality our way right out of here. If you are... So first of all, shout out to anybody who has ever listened to Podcast Growth U. I checked recently, and it was a top 100 podcast. So it was numbered 80 or 60 or 70. So there is no podcasting category. I have it in how-to podcast.
Oh, nice.
But it's a top 100 show. So thank you to anybody who is listening to this show that also has listened to that show. If you are looking for help with your podcast, that is a free resource. I do an episode every single week, and I try to give it everything I got. I try to give stuff that really, really has worked for me as a coach and us as podcasters, and I try to go as deep as I can on that podcast. So if you're looking for a podcast to help you with your podcast, check out Podcast Growth U. Totally free. And if you listen to us, you're already used to listening to me blabber about things. So
I know Kev. I know him very well. And if you are trying to start, grow, and monetize a podcast in the real world with real people, building a real community, helping people, getting your message out there and speaking into the lives of others, I can say with a very, 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 very strong amount of certainty that you're not going to get a more authentic, heart-driven version of someone who's been there and done it for this many reps.
Appreciate it.
The walking the talk for Kev is very, very high. And so just be careful with anyone who talks more than they walk, myself included. I try really hard never to give advice that I'm not personally experimenting with or doing. As a matter of fact, whenever I'm not talking about something anymore, it means I probably stopped doing it. So speaking of walking my talk, we have a book club every week. We are reading The Psychology of Money, which is, I think, why we're talking a little bit more about the global economy. But it's every Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think we've done 160 sessions, so 160 weeks in a row. So it's been going for more than 3 years, and it's a really tight-knit community in there. It's a safe space, not recorded. You do not have to be on your microphone or your camera. You can come in and just listen in if you want, or the chat is often on fire. We set intentions. We've got a WhatsApp group. It's really becoming a safe space for people to learn and grow together. Better together than alone. No one wants to be alone on this growth journey. I certainly don't. And it's been awesome. So join us. The link will be in the show notes.
We don't know what we're doing for tomorrow's episode. We squeezed this one in. And by squeezed, we did 30 minutes. But we're not sure what we're doing for tomorrow's episode. But just take you behind the scenes quick. Our goal, I know I said we were going to do better, and we will do better. It's just taking longer than originally expected. Our goal is to get ahead on Mondays. That way we know, okay, after this episode, we're going to do this. So that's our commitment. We're going to continue to get better and continue to juggle all the other stuff. So tomorrow's episode will be a surprise to all of us, including Alan and myself. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.
Don't get stuck in your circumstances. Next Level Nation.